The laughter from the men's restroom echoed through the marble walls of Romano's, the city's most expensive restaurant. Zara had excused herself from the dinner table to powder her nose when she heard her husband's voice carrying through the thin wall between the restrooms. Honestly, bringing Zara to these business dinners is such a burden. Jonathan's voice was clear and cruel. She just sits there looking pretty while the real players talk business. At least Natalie understands the deals we're making. Your secretary? Another man's voice chuckled. She's certainly more attentive than most assistants. Natalie gets me in ways Zara never could. She's brilliant with numbers and knows how to handle a real man's needs. Jonathan's laugh made Zara's stomach turn. Zara's just dead weight now. All she does is spend my money and look good at charity events. Zara pressed her back against the cold bathroom wall, her hands shaking as she gripped her diamond clutch. The same clutch Jonathan had bought her last Christmas, telling her she deserved only the finest things. The same Jonathan who was now laughing with his friends about how worthless she was. Your wife does bring in a lot of social connections though, a third voice added. Her family's money opened a lot of doors for your business. Her family's money. Jonathan scoffed. That's all she's good for. A pretty face and daddy's inheritance. But Natalie, she's the future. Smart, ambitious, and she actually contributes to my success instead of just existing on the sidelines. The bathroom door slammed as the men returned to their table. Zara stared at her reflection in the golden mirror. Her dark skin looked pale under the bright lights. Her perfectly styled hair and expensive dress suddenly felt like a costume she was wearing for people who saw her as nothing more than decoration. 23 years of marriage. 23 years of supporting his dreams, hosting his clients, and believing his sweet words about being his perfect partner. All while he was telling his friends she was a burden and sleeping with his secretary. Zara took a deep breath and fixed her lipstick. Her grandmother had always told her that a woman's greatest weapon was her mind, not her tears. Tonight, she would smile and play the part of the devoted wife one last time. But starting tomorrow, Jonathan would learn exactly what losing her family's money and connections would cost him. She walked back to the table where Jonathan was deep in conversation with his business partners about a new development project. Natalie, his secretary, sat across from them, her fingers dancing across her tablet as she took notes. Her red dress was too tight, her smile too bright, and her attention to Jonathan too obvious. "There you are, darling," Jonathan said without looking up from his conversation. "We were just discussing the Peterson contract. Natalie thinks we should restructure the payment terms." "How wonderful," Zara said, her voice smooth as silk. She sat down and reached for her wine glass, noting how Natalie's eyes followed every movement. "I'm sure Natalie has many helpful suggestions." Natalie's cheeks flushed slightly, but she kept her professional smile. "I try to stay on top of all the details, Mrs. Chin." "Johnson," Zara corrected coolly. "My name is Johnson." She had never taken Jonathan's last name, keeping her family name for business purposes. Tonight, she was grateful for that small act of independence. The dinner continued with talk of contracts, investments, and profit margins. Zara smiled and nodded at appropriate moments while her mind raced through everything she needed to do. Her family's wealth wasn't just inheritance money, it was a business empire she had helped build from the ground up. Jonathan might think he was the successful one, but every major deal he had closed used her connections, her family's backing, or her financial support. As dessert arrived, Jonathan finally turned his attention to her. "You're quiet tonight, sweetheart. Everything okay?" "Perfect," Zara replied, meeting his eyes directly. "I was just thinking about some changes I need to make." "Changes?" Jonathan laughed and patted her hand like she was a child. "What kind of changes? New decorator for the house? Another charity project?" His business partners chuckled, and Natalie hid her smile behind her napkin. They all saw her the same way, pretty, rich, and useless. A trophy wife who existed to look good and write checks. "Something like that," Zara said, pulling her hand away gently. She stood up and gathered her purse. "I think I'll head home early. This conversation is giving me a headache." "I'll drive you." Jonathan started to stand, but Zara waved him off. "Stay and finish your meeting. I know how important Natalie's input is to your success." Her voice was honey sweet, but there was steel underneath that made Natalie shift uncomfortably. As Zara walked through the restaurant, she pulled out her phone and made 3 quick calls. First to her driver, then to her lawyer, and finally to her financial advisor. All 3 were told the same thing: clear their schedules for tomorrow morning. She had work to do. The drive home gave her time to think. Jonathan thought her family's money was his money. He thought her connections were his connections. He thought she was just a pretty face who would always be there, grateful for his attention while he entertained himself with other women. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Her phone buzzed with a text from her lawyer. Emergency meeting confirmed for 7 a.m. Divorce papers will be ready by noon. Another text from her financial advisor. Asset protection plan activated. All accounts secured. Zara smiled as her driver pulled into the circular driveway of their mansion. Her mansion, bought with her family's money and kept in her name. Tomorrow would be the beginning of Jonathan's education about exactly who he had married and what he was about to lose. The burden was about to lift herself right out of his life, taking everything with her. Zara woke up at 5 in the morning, 2 hours before Jonathan's alarm would go off. She had barely slept, but her mind was crystal clear. The hurt from last night had transformed into something much more powerful: determination. She dressed in her sharpest business suit, the navy blue Armani that made her feel invincible. Her grandmother's diamond earrings caught the early morning light as she checked her appearance one final time. Today she would need every ounce of confidence she possessed. Jonathan was still snoring in their king-sized bed, completely unaware that his world was about to crumble. His phone sat on the nightstand, probably full of texts from Natalie. Zara felt no urge to check it. She had heard enough last night to know exactly where she stood. Her home office was on the first floor, a space Jonathan rarely entered. He called it her hobby room, where she played at being businesswoman. If only he knew that this room was where she managed investments worth more than his entire company. Zara opened her laptop and began pulling up files she hadn't looked at in months. Financial records, legal documents, and business contracts that would paint a very clear picture of their marriage's true dynamics. Jonathan might have been the face of their social circle, but she was the bank account that funded it all. Her phone rang exactly at 7. Richard Blackwood here. Her lawyer's voice was professional but concerned. Zara, I have to ask, are you absolutely sure about this? Divorce can be complicated when there's this much money involved. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Zara replied, settling into her leather chair. How quickly can we move? With your financial documentation and the prenup you insisted on 23 years ago, quite quickly. Jonathan signed away rights to your family inheritance, your business interests, and the house. The only joint assets are the ones you chose to share with him. Zara remembered that prenup negotiation. Jonathan had been so confident in his own earning potential that he had signed without reading the details carefully. Her father had insisted on ironclad protection for the family wealth, and she had followed his advice despite Jonathan's protests about not trusting him. What about his business? She asked. That's where it gets interesting. Richard's voice held a note of satisfaction. 87% of his company's funding came from loans backed by your personal guarantee. You can call those loans at any time. Zara had forgotten about those guarantees. Jonathan had convinced her to back his business ventures over the years, promising they were building something together. She had signed the papers without thinking twice, trusting her husband to make good investments. Call them, she said without hesitation. Zara, that will bankrupt his company within 30 days. Good. What else? Richard went through the list methodically. The house, cars, country club memberships, investment accounts, and even Jonathan's beloved yacht were all either in her name or purchased with her money. His salary from his company was good, but not enough to maintain the lifestyle he had grown accustomed to. There's something else, Richard said carefully. I did some preliminary investigation into his affair with his secretary. There are hotel receipts charged to company accounts, expensive gifts purchased during business hours, and several trips that were supposedly business meetings but included only the two of them. Financial misconduct? Embezzlement, most likely. Using company funds for personal entertainment is a serious matter, especially since you're the primary investor in his company. Zara felt a cold satisfaction wash over her. Jonathan hadn't just betrayed her personally, he had stolen from her financially while calling her a burden. Her second meeting was at 9 with her financial advisor, Patricia Wells. Patricia had managed the Johnson family wealth for over 40 years and had watched Zara grow from a trust fund baby into a serious businesswoman. I've been waiting for this day, Patricia said as soon as Zara walked into her office. Not because I wanted your marriage to fail, but because you've been hiding your light under a bushel for too long. What do you mean? Patricia pulled out a thick folder. Your personal investment portfolio has grown by 340% in the last 5 years. The foundation you started has helped over 2,000 women start their own businesses. You've quietly become one of the most successful investors in the city, but you let Jonathan take credit for your financial acumen. Zara stared at the numbers on the pages. She had been so focused on being a supportive wife that she had forgotten how capable she was on her own. How much? She asked quietly. Personal liquid assets, 700 million. Investment properties, another 300 million. Business partnerships and trust funds, close to 2 billion. Zara, you're not just wealthy, you're one of the richest women in the state. The room spun slightly. Zara had always known her family had money, but she had never calculated her own worth. She had been living like Jonathan's dependent when she could have bought his entire company without denting her bank account. What does Jonathan have without me? She asked. Patricia's smile was sharp. His company, which is mortgaged against your assets. His salary, which is good but not spectacular. His reputation, which depends largely on your social connections. Take away your backing and he's a middle management executive with expensive taste and no way to pay for it. They spent the next 2 hours moving money into accounts that Jonathan had never known existed. International investments, offshore holdings, and trust funds that would be completely untouchable in the divorce proceedings. By lunchtime, Zara had transformed from a trophy wife into a financial fortress. Jonathan still had no idea what was coming. She drove home to find him in his office on the phone with someone. Probably Natalie, based on his flirtatious tone. Zara didn't bother listening. She had heard enough of his lies to last a lifetime. Instead, she went to their bedroom and began packing. Not everything that would tip him off. Just the important things. Her grandmother's jewelry, personal documents, and clothes she actually loved instead of the outfits Jonathan preferred her to wear. Her phone buzzed with a text from Richard. Papers ready. When do you want to serve them? Zara looked around the bedroom she had shared with Jonathan for over 2 decades. The California king bed where he had promised to love and honor her. The walk-in closet filled with clothes he had chosen to dress her like a doll. The balcony where they had talked about growing old together. All of it felt like a museum, now pretty to look at but empty of real life. She typed back, tomorrow? At his office. Make sure Natalie is there to see it. If Jonathan wanted to treat her like a burden, she would show him what losing that burden actually cost. And she would make sure his secretary, his future, got a front row seat to watch his empire crumble. The silent storm was about to become a hurricane, and Zara was ready to watch everything blow away. Zara spent the evening moving through her daily routine like an actress playing a familiar role. She made dinner, asked Jonathan about his day, and listened to him complain about difficult clients and lazy employees. He never once asked about her day or noticed that she was unusually quiet. Natalie really saved the Peterson deal today, Jonathan said over his wine. She caught an error in the contract that could have cost us millions. I don't know what I'd do without her. I'm sure you don't, Zara replied, cutting into her salmon with more force than necessary. Jonathan was too absorbed in praising his secretary to notice the edge in his wife's voice. She's brilliant with numbers. Really understands the market in a way that most people don't. I'm thinking about promoting her to partner. How generous of you. She deserves it. Natalie puts in the work, you know? She's dedicated to the company's success. He paused to take another sip of wine. Not everyone has that kind of drive. Zara set down her fork and looked directly at her husband. What kind of drive do you think I have, Jonathan? He blinked, surprised by the question. What do you mean? You said not everyone has drive. I'm wondering what you think I'm driven by. Jonathan shifted uncomfortably. Well, you have your charity work. That's important too. Different kind of contribution. Different how? You know. He waved his hand vaguely. Social stuff. Hosting events, networking with other wives. It's valuable in its own way. Zara nodded slowly. Even now, even after everything she had learned about their finances and her own capabilities, Jonathan saw her as nothing more than a pretty socialite who wrote checks and threw parties. I see, she said quietly. And you think Natalie contributes more to your success than I do? That's not. I mean, they're different types of contributions. Jonathan was backpedaling now, sensing dangerous territory. You do your thing, she does hers. My thing? Zara repeated. Supporting your business ventures with my money, introducing you to clients through my connections, and guaranteeing your loans with my assets. That thing? Jonathan's face went pale. How do you know about the loan guarantees? I signed them, Jonathan. Did you think I was too stupid to remember? No, of course not. We never really talked about business stuff at home. Because you thought I wouldn't understand. Because you think I'm just a pretty face with daddy's money. Jonathan opened his mouth to protest, but Zara held up her hand. Don't, she said firmly. Don't insult my intelligence by lying now. I heard you last night. Every word. The color drained completely from Jonathan's face. Zara, I heard you call me a burden. I heard you praise Natalie for being everything you think I'm not. I heard you laughing about how I just spend your money and look good at charity events. Jonathan's wine glass trembled in his hand. You weren't supposed to. I was just talking. Guy talk. You know how that is. No, I don't know how that is. Because I've never talked about you like you were worthless. I've never mocked you to my friends or compared you unfavorably to other men. Zara, please. You're taking it out of context. Zara stood up from the table, her movements calm and controlled. The context is that you've been having an affair with your secretary while telling your friends that your wife is dead weight. Is there some other context I should consider? Jonathan's shoulders sagged. How long have you known? Does it matter? The question is, how long has it been going on? 2 years, he whispered. Maybe 3. 3 years of lies. 3 years of him coming home to her bed after being with another woman. 3 years of her trusting him while he planned a future that didn't include her. Do you love her? Zara asked, surprised by how steady her voice remained. Jonathan looked up at her, his eyes filled with something that might have been regret. I don't know. I think so. She makes me feel important? Successful? Like a real man? He nodded miserably. And I make you feel what exactly? Comfortable, he said after a long pause. Safe. Like everything will always be okay because you'll take care of it. Zara almost laughed. So Natalie makes you feel like a success and I make you feel secure. And somehow you decided that meant I was a burden instead of a blessing. I never meant for you to get hurt. You never thought about me at all, Zara corrected. If you had, you might have realized that the woman who makes you feel safe and takes care of everything might be worth keeping around. She walked toward the door, then turned back. I'll be staying in the guest room tonight. And Jonathan? Tomorrow is going to be a very interesting day for you. Zara climbed the stairs to the guest bedroom, closed the door, and finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of what she had learned. 23 years of marriage ending not with a fight or a dramatic confrontation, but with the quiet realization that the man she had loved had never really seen her at all. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the number she was looking for. Her cousin Amelia answered on the second ring. Zara? It's late. Is everything okay? No, Zara said, her voice breaking slightly. It's really not. But it's going to be. She spent an hour telling Amelia everything: the affair, the overheard conversation, the financial revelations from her meetings. Amelia listened without judgment, offering support and practical advice in equal measure. You know what this means, don't you? Amelia said finally. You get to find out who you really are without someone else's expectations weighing you down. I'm scared, Zara admitted. I've been Mrs. Jonathan Chin for so long, I'm not sure I remember how to be just Zara Johnson. Then it's time to remember. And Zara? The woman who built a multi-million-dollar investment portfolio while her husband thought she was just writing charity checks is someone worth rediscovering. After they hung up, Zara sat in the unfamiliar bedroom and looked at her reflection in the mirror across the room. Tomorrow she would serve Jonathan with divorce papers in front of his colleagues and his mistress. Tomorrow she would begin the process of reclaiming her life. But tonight, she mourned the marriage she had thought she was living and the husband she had thought she knew. Tomorrow would be about strength and justice and new beginnings. Tonight was for saying goodbye to the woman who had made herself small to make someone else feel big. She was done being a burden. It was time to remember how to fly. Zara woke before dawn, feeling more clear-headed than she had in years. The guest bedroom was smaller than the master suite, but it felt like freedom. No longer sharing space with a man who saw her as an obligation instead of a partner. She checked her phone to find several messages from her team. Richard had confirmed that the divorce papers would be ready by 10 a.m. Patricia had moved the last of her accessible assets into secure accounts. Her private investigator, a discreet woman named Helena Barnes, had sent a preliminary report on Jonathan and Natalie's relationship. The photos were damning. Jonathan and Natalie at expensive restaurants, holding hands across candlelit tables. Walking into luxury hotels together during lunch hours. Kissing in the parking garage of his office building. Even without the financial misconduct, the evidence of his affair was overwhelming. But it was the financial records that would destroy him. Helena had traced company credit card charges to romantic getaways, expensive jewelry that had never appeared in Zara's jewelry box, and lavish dinners that were billed as business expenses but included only Jonathan and Natalie. Embezzlement, Zara murmured, scrolling through the evidence. Using my investment money to finance his affair. Her phone rang. Helena's voice was crisp and professional. Mrs. Johnson? I have additional information about Mr. Chen's business practices. It's worse than we initially thought. How much worse? He's been inflating project costs and pocketing the difference. The Peterson contract you heard him discussing? He padded the budget by 30%. Given that you're the primary investor, he's essentially been stealing from you for at least 5 years. Zara felt a cold fury settle in her chest. Not only had Jonathan been betraying her personally, he had been stealing from her financially while calling her a burden. How much money are we talking about? Conservative estimate? Close to $2 million over the past 5 years. Possibly more if we dig deeper into the older contracts. $2 million stolen from her while he complained about her spending on charity events and household expenses. $2 million used to impress another woman while he mocked his wife to his friends. I want everything documented, Zara said firmly. Every receipt, every charge, every inflated contract. I want a case so airtight that his own lawyers will advise him to settle quickly. Consider it done. I'll have the complete financial analysis ready by this afternoon. After Helena hung up, Zara made herself a simple breakfast and sat in her morning room overlooking the garden. The roses were blooming beautifully, tended by the gardener she paid for with her own money. The house around her was peaceful and elegant, decorated according to her taste and filled with art she had chosen. Jonathan had contributed very little to their home beyond his presence. Even their furniture and artwork had been purchased with her funds, though he had taken credit for their refined taste when guests complimented their decor. Her phone buzzed with a text from Richard, "Papers ready for service. Are you sure you want to do this publicly?" Zara typed back quickly, "Absolutely." His office in front of as many people as possible. She wanted Jonathan to feel the same shock and humiliation she had felt in that restaurant bathroom. She wanted Natalie to understand that actions had consequences. Most importantly, she wanted everyone in their social and professional circles to know that Jonathan Chen was not the successful businessman he pretended to be. At 9 a.m., Zara drove to her lawyer's office to review the divorce papers one final time. The documents were thorough and devastating. Jonathan would keep his personal items, his car, and whatever salary his company paid him after she withdrew her backing. Everything else, the house, investments, business interests, and luxury items, would remain with her. He might try to claim he contributed to building your wealth, Richard warned. Judges sometimes award partial ownership based on emotional or supportive contributions to a marriage. Let him try, Zara replied calmly. I have 23 years of financial records showing that every major asset was purchased with my money or my family's money. He never even co-signed on most of the investments. Richard smiled grimly. His lawyers are going to have a very difficult time building a case for him. At 11 a.m., Zara drove to Jonathan's office building. She had been here hundreds of times for company parties, client meetings, and social events. The staff knew her as the boss's wife, the elegant woman who wrote checks and smiled at company functions. Today she was here as something much more powerful. The process server Richard had hired was waiting in the lobby, a professional woman in a business suit who looked like she could be delivering any kind of legal documents. Zara took the elevator to the 20th floor, her heart beating steadily but her mind crystal clear. Jonathan's company occupied the entire floor, with his corner office at the far end. Zara walked through the familiar hallways, nodding to employees who greeted her warmly. None of them knew that their paychecks depended on her continued financial backing. Through the glass walls of Jonathan's office, she could see him in a meeting with 4 other people. Natalie sat directly across from him, wearing a red dress that was slightly too tight and definitely too low-cut for a business meeting. She was taking notes on her tablet while gazing adoringly at Jonathan. The other 3 people in the meeting were potential investors that Zara recognized from previous social events. Jonathan was clearly trying to expand his business without relying on his wife's money. Too bad he was about to learn that his reputation depended on her support as much as his bank account did. Zara waited in the reception area until the meeting ended. As the potential investors filed out of Jonathan's office, she approached them with her warmest smile. "Mr. Patterson, Mrs. Goldman, how lovely to see you both," she said graciously. "I hope Jonathan is treating you well." "Mrs. Chen." Mr. Patterson beamed. "Your husband is showing us some very interesting investment opportunities. We were just discussing the Peterson project's success." "Yes, that was quite profitable," Zara agreed smoothly. "Of course, most of Jonathan's successful projects have been backed by my family's investment firm. We've been so proud to support his vision." She let that sink in for a moment, watching as the potential investors exchanged glances. In their world, family money meant old money, and old money meant stability and connections that new entrepreneurs couldn't match. Well, Mrs. Goldman said carefully, it's always wise to have solid financial backing for ambitious projects. Absolutely, Zara agreed. Though I'm afraid my investment priorities are shifting somewhat. I'm focusing more on supporting women-owned businesses and sustainable development projects. Different directions than Jonathan's current interests. The message was clear. The Johnson family money would no longer be available to support Jonathan's company. Mr. Patterson and Mrs. Goldman were savvy enough to understand the implications immediately. As the potential investors left, looking considerably less enthusiastic than when they had arrived, Zara walked toward Jonathan's office. Through the glass, she could see him kissing Natalie's cheek and whispering something that made her giggle. The process server appeared beside Zara. "Ready, Mrs. Johnson?" "More than ready," Zara replied. She knocked on Jonathan's office door and walked in without waiting for permission. Jonathan looked up in surprise, his hand still resting on Natalie's shoulder. "Zara? What are you doing here?" "Jonathan Chin," the process server said formally, stepping into the office behind Zara. "You are being served with divorce papers and a cease and desist order regarding the misuse of Johnson family investment funds." The blood drained from Jonathan's face as he accepted the thick envelope. Natalie's eyes went wide and she actually took a step backward. "Divorce papers?" Natalie whispered. "But you said you were separated. You said she knew about us." "Did he?" Zara asked pleasantly. "How interesting." "No, Miss Williams, I only learned about you 2 nights ago when I overheard my husband telling his friends what a burden I was and how much more valuable you are to his success." Natalie looked like she wanted to disappear through the floor. Several other employees had gathered outside the glass office, clearly sensing drama but unable to hear the conversation. "I also learned some fascinating things about company finances," Zara continued, her voice remaining calm and professional. "Helena Barnes, my private investigator, has documented extensive evidence of embezzlement and financial misconduct. The district attorney's office will be receiving copies of that evidence this afternoon." Jonathan's hands were shaking as he tried to open the legal documents. "Zara, we can talk about this at home." "You don't need to." "I'm afraid there's nothing to discuss," Zara interrupted. "You called me a burden, Jonathan. So I'm lifting that burden. You no longer have access to my money, my connections, my support, or my patience." She turned to Natalie, who was clutching her tablet like a shield. "Miss Williams, I hope you're prepared to support Jonathan on your secretary's salary. Because as of this moment, his company has 30 days to repay the loans. I guaranteed all $7 million of them." Natalie's face went white. $7 million? Didn't he tell you? Jonathan's entire business empire is built on my family's money. Take that away, and he's just another middle-aged man with expensive taste and no way to pay for it. Zara walked toward the door, then turned back with her most brilliant smile. "Oh, and Jonathan? The house, the cars, the yacht, and the country club memberships are all in my name. You have until Friday to collect your personal belongings. After that, you'll need to find somewhere else to live." As she left the office, Zara could hear Jonathan trying to explain to Natalie, his voice rising in panic. The employees in the hallway stepped aside to let her pass, their expressions ranging from shocked to impressed. In the elevator, Zara allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. The burden had been lifted, and gravity was about to teach Jonathan some very expensive lessons about taking people for granted. The best part? This was only the beginning. By the time Zara returned home, her phone was buzzing constantly with calls and texts from Jonathan. She ignored them all, focusing instead on the movers who were already carefully packing her personal belongings. Patricia had recommended the service discreet professionals who specialized in high-net-worth divorces. They knew exactly what to take and what to leave behind. Zara's clothes, jewelry, artwork, and personal documents were being carefully wrapped and loaded into unmarked trucks. "Where would you like everything delivered, Mrs. Johnson?" the lead mover asked. "The penthouse on Fifth Avenue," Zara replied. She had purchased the property 2 years ago as an investment, never imagining she would need it as a refuge from her own marriage. "The concierge has the keys." Her phone rang again. This time it was Natalie calling from Jonathan's office. Zara almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity won. "Hello, Miss Williams," she answered coolly. "Mrs. Chin Johnson, please, I need to talk to you." Natalie's voice was shaking. "Jonathan is having some kind of breakdown. He's locked himself in his office and won't come out." "That sounds like a personal problem. But the business, the investors, everyone's asking questions about the loans and the financial backing. I don't know what to tell them." Zara sat down in her living room, watching the movers wrap her grandmother's china. Tell them the truth, Miss Williams. The Johnson family is withdrawing financial support from the company. All loan guarantees are being called in immediately. But that will bankrupt the company. Yes, it will. Zara's voice remained pleasant. Perhaps you should have considered that before you decided to have an affair with a married man whose business depended on his wife's money. There was silence on the other end of the line, then the sound of Natalie crying. Please, Natalie whispered. I didn't know how much of the business was your money. Jonathan made it sound like he was this successful entrepreneur who had built everything himself. And you believed him because it was convenient to believe him, Zara replied. Just like it was convenient to sleep with him while he was married to someone else. I thought you two were separated. He said you were just staying together for appearances. Zara almost laughed. Miss Williams, did you think the wife who was just staying for appearances would be hosting dinner parties at our home? Attending business functions as his loving partner? Taking weekend trips together just last month? Another sob from Natalie. He said those were obligations. That you two were just going through the motions. Well, now you know the truth. Jonathan is a liar who was stealing from his wife to impress his secretary. And now both of you are going to face the consequences. Zara hung up and immediately called her financial advisor. Patricia, it's time to call in all the loans. I want Jonathan's company to receive formal notice that payment is due within 30 days. That's going to create quite a stir in the business community, Patricia warned. People will want to know why you're pulling support so suddenly. Let them ask. By tomorrow, everyone will know about the affair and the embezzlement. I'd rather control the narrative than let Jonathan spin his version of events. Her next call was to her social secretary, a efficient woman named Carol who managed Zara's charity work and social calendar. Carol, I need you to make some calls. The Johnson Foundation will no longer be supporting any events or organizations that Jonathan Chin is involved with. Also, please reach out to the country club board and let them know that Jonathan's membership was dependent on my family membership. That arrangement is ending immediately. Should I give them a reason? Carol asked diplomatically. Just say that due to personal circumstances, the Johnson family can no longer extend membership privileges to Mr. Chen. They'll figure out the rest. Within 2 hours, Zara's phone began ringing with calls from their social circle. Word traveled fast in their world, and the news that Zara Johnson was divorcing her husband after serving him papers at his office was spreading like wildfire. She answered carefully selected calls, speaking with key influencers who would ensure her version of events reached the right people. Margaret, how good to hear from you, Zara said to the president of the Children's Hospital Board. Yes, it's true. I discovered that Jonathan has been having an affair with his secretary and embezzling money from his company. My lawyers have all the evidence. My goodness, Zara. I had no idea. You always seemed so happy together. I thought we were happy too. Apparently, I was the only one who believed in our marriage. Zara let just the right amount of hurt creep into her voice. The hardest part is learning that he's been using my investment money to finance his affair. Taking my trust and turning it into a weapon against our marriage. By evening, the story had reached every important family in their social circle. Jonathan Chin was no longer seen as a successful businessman. He was a cheater and a thief who had betrayed the woman whose money had built his entire lifestyle. Zara's phone rang one more time as she was settling into her new penthouse apartment. The caller ID showed Jonathan's number. Hello, Jonathan, she answered calmly. Zara, please. We need to talk. This is getting out of hand. His voice was hoarse, probably from hours of phone calls trying to control the damage to his reputation. Is it getting out of hand? Or is it finally getting to the truth? You're destroying everything I've worked for. I'm not destroying anything, Jonathan. I'm simply taking back what was mine to begin with. You worked for those things using my money, my connections, and my support. Take those away and what's left? 23 years of marriage. That has to count for something. It did count for something. It counted for my loyalty, my trust, and my love. All of which you threw away for a woman who thought you were successful enough to risk her job for. Natalie didn't know. Natalie knew exactly what she was doing, Zara cut him off. Just like you knew exactly what you were risking when you decided to call me a burden and steal from me to impress her. I never meant for you to hear that conversation. No, you just meant to say those things about me behind my back while taking my money and sleeping in my bed. Tell me, Jonathan, which part of that was supposed to make me feel better? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. What do you want? Jonathan asked finally, his voice defeated. I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to realize that the woman you called a burden was actually the foundation that your entire life was built on. And I want you to learn what it's like to stand on your own without anyone else holding you up. The loans, if you call them in, the company will go bankrupt. Everyone will lose their jobs. Then you'd better figure out how to get $7 million in 30 days. I hear Natalie is good with numbers. Maybe she can help. Zara hung up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows of her new apartment. The city sparkled below her, full of possibilities and opportunities. For the first time in years, she felt like herself again, not someone's wife or someone's burden, but Zara Johnson, successful businesswoman and philanthropist. Her reflection in the window showed a woman who looked younger somehow, as if shedding her marriage had taken years off her appearance. Her eyes were brighter, her shoulders straighter, her smile more genuine. Tomorrow she would meet with Patricia to discuss new investment opportunities. She had been thinking about expanding her foundation's work, maybe starting a program to help women leave toxic relationships and rebuild their financial independence. She had also been considering some personal investments, a hotel chain, perhaps, or a tech startup run by brilliant women who deserved better backing than they usually received. The possibilities were endless when you controlled your own destiny instead of letting someone else define your worth. Zara smiled at her reflection and raised her glass of wine in a toast. To new beginnings, she said aloud, and to learning exactly how much a burden weighs when it's lifted. Outside her window, the city hummed with life and energy. Somewhere out there, Jonathan was probably trying to figure out how to save his company and his reputation. But that was no longer her problem to solve. For the first time in 23 years, Zara Johnson was free to focus on her own happiness. And it felt absolutely wonderful. 3 days after serving the divorce papers, Zara sat in her new penthouse office reviewing reports from Helena, her private investigator. The evidence of Jonathan's financial misconduct was even worse than they had initially discovered. He's been systematically overcharging clients and keeping the difference, Helena explained over coffee. The Peterson contract alone shows nearly $400,000 in fraudulent billing. He would submit invoices to you for project costs, then negotiate lower actual costs with contractors and pocket the savings. Zara shook her head in disgust. So he was stealing from me and from his clients. How did no one notice? Because you trusted him completely and never audited the books. And his clients trusted his reputation, which was built on your family's name and connections. The phone rang, interrupting their conversation. Carol, her social secretary, sounded excited. Mrs. Johnson, you need to know what's happening at the country club. Jonathan showed up for his weekly golf game and was told his membership had been suspended. He caused quite a scene. What kind of scene? He started yelling about how he had been a member for 15 years and demanding to speak to the board president. When they explained that his membership was through your family's corporate account, he actually said that you were his wife and had no right to cut off his access. Zara almost smiled. What did they tell him? Mr. Morrison told him that estranged wives have every right to discontinue benefits they were providing to unfaithful husbands. Apparently, half the dining room heard the conversation. The social implications were devastating. In their circle, being banned from the country club was like being excommunicated. Jonathan's business lunches, golf meetings, and social networking would all disappear overnight. Helena pulled out her tablet. That's not the worst of it. This morning, 3 major clients called his office to cancel their contracts. Word is spreading about the embezzlement investigation, and no one wants to be associated with a scandal. How is the company holding up? Barely. Natalie has been trying to keep things running, but she's in over her head. She's a secretary, not a business manager. The staff is panicking because paychecks might bounce if the loan payments come due. Zara felt a brief pang of sympathy for the employees who had done nothing wrong. Then she remembered that they had all been paid with money that Jonathan had stolen from her. What about Natalie? How is she handling the pressure? Helena's expression was grim. Not well. My sources say she's been crying at her desk and making mistakes on important documents. She also received some interesting phone calls yesterday. From whom? Her ex-boyfriend, for one. Apparently, he heard about Jonathan's financial troubles and called to tell her she was an idiot for leaving a stable relationship for a married man who turned out to be broke. Anyone else? Her mother. That conversation was overheard by several employees. Lots of yelling about how she raised her daughter better than to be a home wrecker and how disappointed she was that Natalie had thrown away her reputation for a man who couldn't even afford to take care of her. Zara tried to feel bad for Natalie, but the sympathy wouldn't come. The woman had known Jonathan was married. She had participated in using company funds for their affair. She had sat in that restaurant bathroom and listened to Jonathan mock his wife without saying a word in Zara's defense. What about Jonathan? How is he handling everything? He's desperate. Yesterday he went to 3 different banks trying to get emergency loans to cover the company debt. All 3 turned him down once they realized his assets were tied up in divorce proceedings and that his primary investor was his estranged wife. Helena flipped to another page in her notes. He also called your cousin Amelia. That got Zara's attention. What did he want with Amelia? He was hoping she could intercede with you. Apparently, he offered her a 20% stake in his company if she could convince you to withdraw the divorce papers and continue backing his business. Zara laughed out loud. He offered her a stake in a bankrupt company as payment for convincing me to forgive his affair? What did she say? She told him that 20% of nothing was still nothing and hung up on him. The phone rang again. This time it was Patricia with a financial update. Zara, I have good news and better news, her advisor said cheerfully. The good news is that your investment portfolio gained another $2 million this quarter. The better news is that Jonathan's company officially defaulted on their loan payments this morning. They couldn't make the payment? They couldn't even make the minimum payment. The bank is seizing all company assets tomorrow morning. Jonathan Chin Enterprises will be officially bankrupt by the end of the week. Zara felt a cold satisfaction. Justice was swift when you controlled the purse strings. What happens to the employees? They'll file for unemployment and look for new jobs. Most of them are skilled enough to find work elsewhere, probably with companies that have more stable funding. And Jonathan? Jobless. The bankruptcy means he can't start a new company easily, and his reputation in the industry is ruined. He'll be lucky to find work as a junior associate somewhere. That evening, Zara met Amelia for dinner at an exclusive restaurant downtown. Her cousin looked amazing, as always, successful, confident, and genuinely happy to see Zara looking so much lighter than she had in years. You look 10 years younger, Amelia said as they settled into their booth. Divorce agrees with you. Freedom agrees with me, Zara corrected. I had forgotten what it felt like to make decisions based on what I wanted instead of what would make someone else happy. Speaking of making people happy, you'll never guess who called me today. I already heard about Jonathan's pathetic attempt to bribe you. 20% of a bankrupt company. Amelia laughed. That wasn't even the best part. After I hung up on him, Natalie called me. Natalie called you? What did she want? She wanted to know if there was any way to fix this situation, because Jonathan was falling apart, and she was scared about the future. Zara raised an eyebrow. Did she actually use those words? Almost exactly. She also wanted to know if you would consider couples counseling to work through your issues. Couples counseling? Zara nearly choked on her wine. She wants me to go to therapy with my cheating husband so his mistress can feel more secure about her future? That's essentially what she was suggesting, yes. I told her that the only therapy Jonathan needed was a job counselor, because he was about to learn what it was like to work for someone else again. They spent the evening discussing Zara's plans for the future. She was thinking about expanding her foundation, maybe starting a scholarship program for women returning to work after divorce. She was also considering some international investments and possibly buying a vacation home in Italy. It's funny, Zara mused over dessert. For 23 years, I worried about Jonathan's happiness, Jonathan's success, Jonathan's reputation. I built my entire life around supporting his dreams and making him feel important. And the whole time, he saw me as a burden. His loss, Amelia said firmly. You're brilliant, successful, and generous. Any man would be lucky to have your support. The difference is, the next man I date will have to bring something to the table besides good looks and charm. I'm not interested in being anyone's financial safety net ever again. As they left the restaurant, Zara's phone buzzed with a text from Helena. Jay tried to contact 3 of your major clients today, offering his services as an independent contractor. All 3 called to report the contact and confirm their loyalty to you. His reputation is completely destroyed. Zara showed the message to Amelia, who shook her head in amazement. He's still trying to use your connections even after everything that's happened? Some people never learn, Zara replied. But that's okay. The lesson is about to get much clearer. As Zara drove back to her penthouse, she reflected on how much her life had changed in just 1 week. 7 days ago, she had been a devoted wife who believed her husband respected and valued her. Today, she was a free woman who controlled her own destiny and answered to no one. The transformation felt natural, like putting on clothes that actually fit after years of wearing the wrong size. This was who she had always been underneath, strong, independent, and capable of building her own empire. Jonathan had called her a burden, but he had been the weight that was holding her back. Now that he was gone, she could finally see how high she was capable of flying. Tomorrow she would start building the next chapter of her life. And this time she would be the only author of her own story. 2 weeks into the divorce proceedings, Jonathan's lawyer called Richard with a settlement offer. Zara was in her attorney's office when the call came through, reviewing the prenuptial agreement that would determine the division of their assets. "He's offering to give you 60% of the marital assets in exchange for dropping the embezzlement charges," Richard